Relax and listen to the voice. Well, hello, all you creepy creatures. Now, this episode is a little different for us, as we don't technically deal in a lot of real-life scenarios. We just feel like there's plenty of other channels out there delving into that. And, in all honesty, it seems like the world can at times be a pretty dark place. We prefer to try to inject some entertainment and light into it. But for this episode, we're going to be discussing some strange, unexplained deaths. Subscribe to the channel. Help us grow. Share this with your family, your friends, colleagues, or anyone else that you know who might enjoy listening to stories, or someone who may need some help relaxing or going to sleep. With that said, alright, here we go. The unexplained death of Ray Rivera. Ray Omar Rivera was born on June 10, 1973, to Angel and Maria Rivera. At the time of his disappearance, Rivera and his wife Allison had relocated to Baltimore from California to work for his longtime friend, publisher Porter Stansberry, as a writer and videographer for Stansberry's investment company, Stansberry and Associates Investment Research, a subsidiary of Agora Publishing. The body of Ray Rivera was found on May 24, 2006, inside the historic Belvedere Hotel in the Mount Vernon neighborhood of Baltimore, Maryland. Although the event was ruled a probable suicide by the Baltimore Police Department, the circumstances of Rivera's death are mysterious and disputed. Rivera went missing from his home on May 16, 2006, shortly after receiving a phone call from the Agora Publishing switchboard, according to a guest who was staying at the Rivera residence at the time. After several days of searching for clues on his whereabouts, Rivera's in-laws found his car located in a parking lot off of St. Paul Street in Baltimore's Mount Vernon neighborhood, near his workplace. Rivera's co-workers went to the top of a parking structure near where the car was discovered and noticed a hole in the roof of the south wing of the Belvedere Hotel next door. Police soon discovered Rivera's partially decomposed body inside the conference room under the hole. As police began to analyze the case, numerous aspects seemed odd about Rivera jumping off the main roof of the Belvedere Hotel. Partly due to the hotel's mansard roof, there was a considerable horizontal distance between the hotel and the location of the hole in the lower roof. The vertical fall of approximately 177 feet would have taken approximately 3.3 seconds. This suggests that Rivera, if he did come from the roof, had traveled a horizontal distance of 43 feet before impact and would have had to have a horizontal speed of 10 miles per hour, which is a speed between a fast run and a sprint for an average fit male wearing sports shoes. Ray was wearing flip-flops or barefoot and would have had a maximum run-up of just over 15 feet or 5 meters. Rivera's eyeglasses and phone were found relatively intact on the lower roof near the hole. Because circumstances surrounding the incident are unclear, the medical examiner marked Rivera's manner of death as undetermined. After searching the house for evidence, Rivera's wife found a note behind his computer. The confusing note included the names of prominent figures in Hollywood, movie titles, Freemasonry quotations, and additional ramblings. The FBI analyzed the note and ruled it not to be suicidal in nature. The Baltimore Police Department would soon step back from their investigation after ruling Rivera's death as a probable suicide. Due to the unexplained and mostly unsolved nature of Rivera's death, his demise was featured in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries in July of 2020. The show offered up a few different ideas of what could have happened to Ray, and one additional theory offered by the show is that Rivera may have jumped from a ledge several floors below the roof, but it would have been difficult for Rivera to access the ledge from the privately owned condominiums and offices that had windows onto the ledge. Another event that may or may not be linked to Rivera's demise is that Stansberry's company often produced a newsletter advising on investments. Rivera wrote for this newsletter. Stansberry was in the process of being sued by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which complained that the company's newsletters contain nothing more than baseless speculation and outright lies, and that in 2002, an email was sent offering to sell the name of a company purportedly about to obtain a contract to dismantle nuclear weapons for Russia. This case went to trial in 2005, and in 2007 produced the ruling that Stansberry's conduct undoubtedly involved deliberate fraud, making statements that he knew to be false, resulting in a fine of $1.5 million. According to Stansberry, in regards to the call that Rivera received on the day he went missing, the allegation is simply impossible because, as he is quoted in saying, "Every person in our company who had worked with Ray was on the Eastern Shore at the time that that call was made. They were there having a corporate retreat." To this day, the family of Ray Rivera does not believe that his death was of his own design. The unexplained deaths of the Jamison family. The Jamison family of Eufaula, Oklahoma, were last seen alive on their home surveillance system, packing their vehicle and leaving their home on October 8, 2009, appearing to be in a trance-like state. Their pickup truck was found abandoned in Latimer County, Oklahoma, a few days later. Bobby Jamison, his wife Cheryl Lynn, and daughter Madison mysteriously disappeared on or after October 8, 2009. The family was reportedly considering the purchase of a 40-acre plot of land near Red Oak, about 30 miles from Eufaula, at the time that they vanished. Their suspected remains were found in November of 2013 and positively identified by the Oklahoma Medical Examiner on July 3, 2014. No cause of death was determined, and the circumstances surrounding their disappearance remain unknown. The initial investigation into the Jamison family's disappearance indicated that they had probably not vanished of their own accord. Their pickup truck was found abandoned in Latimer County, Oklahoma, a short distance south of Quinta, a few days after their disappearance. The Jamisons' bodies were not found, but their malnourished dog, Maisie, was still in the truck. Also discovered inside of the truck were the family's ID cards, wallets, mobile phones, a GPS system, and about $32,000 in cash. The Jamisons were not known for carrying large amounts of cash with them. Footage from the family's home surveillance system time-stamped the day they left their house, showing the couple making several silent trips between their vehicle and home as they methodically packed to leave. In the footage, the couple's movements were described as trance-like. The video also shows Cheryl Lynn place a brown briefcase in the vehicle. Former Sheriff Beauchamp remarked that he believed the briefcase could be an important clue. Both the briefcase and Cheryl Lynn's handgun have never been recovered. The skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child were discovered by 2 hunters in a remote area of Latimer County in November 2013, more than 4 years after the family went missing, and less than 3 miles away from where the pickup truck had been abandoned. The remains were widely presumed to be those of the missing family, though the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office had to use anthropological and forensic pathological testing to identify them. Officials confirmed on July 3, 2014, that the remains belonged to the Jamisons. A cause of death was not determined due to the heavily decomposed state of the bodies. There are many theories about what happened to the Jamisons. Before the remains were discovered, several theories emerged about the family's disappearance, such as that they had faked their own deaths, that they were in witness protection, that they were murdered or had died by group suicide. Shortly before the disappearance, Bobby Jamison was involved in a bitter lawsuit with his father, Bob Dean Jamison, claiming that he had threatened the family and had struck him with his vehicle in November of 2008. Bobby also alleged that his father was involved in methamphetamine use and criminal activity. As of last notice, the police do not believe that Bob Dean Jamison was involved in the family's disappearance. Another popular theory was that the Jamisons themselves were drug dealers. Investigators cited the large amount of cash found in their truck and the apparent strange behavior exhibited by Bobby and Cheryl Lynn shortly before they went missing. The Jamisons had reportedly told their local pastor, Gary Brandon, on separate occasions that they had seen spirits inside their home and that Bobby had allegedly claimed to have been reading from the Satanic Bible. As of this reading, the cause of death for the Jamison family is still listed as unknown. The Jamisons' disappearance and deaths were profiled on the Investigation Discovery series Disappeared in late 2010 in an episode titled Paradise Lost. The unexplained death of Cindy James. Cynthia Elizabeth James, born Cynthia Elizabeth Hack, was a Canadian nurse who disappeared from Richmond, British Columbia on May 25, 1989. She was found deceased approximately 2 weeks later in the yard of an abandoned house, hogtied and with a nylon stocking wrapped around her throat. An autopsy indicated that she had died of an overdose of morphine, diazepam, and flurazepam. Cindy James's death was notable as she had made numerous reports to authorities dating back to 1982, alleging that she had been the victim of various acts of stalking, harassment, vandalism, home invasions, and physical attacks perpetrated by an unknown assailant. Cindy's death and prior allegations were subjects of great dispute as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were unable to find any evidence suggesting that she had been an actual victim of a stalker. Furthermore, she had a documented medical history of depression and suicidal thoughts, leading authorities to suspect that she may have been fabricating the various attacks and the other incidents herself, orchestrating them to appear as legitimate, culminating in an eventual staged suicide. Over the nearly 7-year period James reported the incidents, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police allocated an estimated $1 to $1.5 million in funds to investigate her claims, marking one of the longest and most costly police investigations in British Columbia history. Despite skepticism from authorities, James's family members publicly insisted that she had, in fact, been preyed upon and eventually murdered. In 1990, a coroner's inquest, which included testimony from more than 80 witnesses, resulted in the conclusion that James had died of an unknown event. Cindy James's death received international media coverage and was the subject of an Unsolved Mysteries segment in 1991. Furthermore, 2 different books were published in 1991, chronicling her life and death. Cindy was one of 6 children, with 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. She spent part of her teenage years in Ottawa due to her father's involvement in the Air Force, and she attended high school there. Cindy had recorded in her private diaries that her childhood had been marked by her father's strictness, which included corporal punishment. In adulthood, Cindy pursued a nursing career in Vancouver and enrolled in nursing school in 1962. During this period, her father had re-enlisted with the Air Force and relocated the family to France, where she visited them during holidays. During this time, in letters to her family, Cindy occasionally referred to an unnamed intern she had met during her studies. She claimed that the 2 of them had at one point been engaged, and that, after finding that he had terminal cancer, the man committed suicide while the couple were on a skiing trip. None of her parents or siblings, however, ever met the man, and Cindy never once mentioned his name. In the summer of 1965, Cindy met Roy Makepeace, a South African psychiatrist 18 years older, her senior. The couple married on December 9th of 1966, the very same year that she graduated from nursing school with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. Cindy's parents and family were skeptical of the marriage due to the couple's age difference, and her father felt that Roy Makepeace had taken advantage of Cindy's naivety and gullibility. Her family testified that the couple's marriage was troubled and that the 2 were at times emotionally distant. Though Cindy later made accusations of spousal abuse, Makepeace asserted, get this, that he only slapped her twice over the course of their marriage. Though licensed as a psychiatrist in his home country of South Africa, Makepeace failed twice to obtain his medical license in Canada and instead accepted a job as an assistant professor in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of British Columbia. Spanning a nearly 7-year period between 1982 and 1989, Cindy reported approximately 90 incidents of criminal activity to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Her claims included alleged acts of stalking, vandalism, arson, harassment, intimidation, home invasions, and physical assaults perpetrated by an unknown person or persons. The incidents began in September of 1982, 4 months after Cindy separated from Roy Makepeace. In late September, she told friends and family members that she suspected that a prowler had been lurking around her home. A series of obscene phone calls soon followed, the first of which was received on October 7, 1982. Cindy's mother relayed that, though she was reluctant to discuss her experiences, she indicated that the phone calls consisted of an individual speaking in different voices and that, on some occasions, there was mere silence on the other end of the line. Cindy described some of the calls as sexual and violent in nature. On October 11th, Cindy received a phone call consisting of loud breathing noises. The following day, she received another call in a menacing whisper which said, "I'll get you one night, Cindy." She reported the obscene calls to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who visited her home and suggested she keep a list of each call and its contents, as well as advising her to get an unlisted number. Shortly after the Royal Canadian Mounted Police left, Cindy received another call in which an apparent male voice said, "You fucking bitch, I'll get you." The next day, on the afternoon of October 13th, another call came and the caller threatened her. "So you think calling the police will keep you safe? You wait. I've got my zipper open. I'm talking to my throbbing..." And Cindy abruptly ended the call. 2 days later, October 15th, Cindy reported to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that she had heard someone lurking outside her home and had awoken in the morning to find her porch lights were smashed. She also reported to police that someone had thrown a rock through one of her windows and entered her house, though nothing else had been disturbed. 4 days later, on October 19th, she reported that someone had entered her home and slashed a pillow on her bed. A constable with the Vancouver Royal Canadian Mounted Police suspected the culprit was her estranged husband, Roy Makepeace, who denied involvement. Cindy herself made conflicting statements regarding Makepeace, telling authorities she did not think he was capable of tormenting her, but also divulged to friends and co-workers that he was violently abusive during their marriage. On October 20th, 2 tenants who rented the basement of Cindy's home reported to police that they heard strange noises upstairs on the main floor after she had left for work. A next-door neighbor informed the constable that she had witnessed a man standing outside the house on at least 3 different occasions, and one time entering the gate of the front yard. The neighbor insisted that the man did not resemble Roy Makepeace. At this time, Cindy concurrently began a relationship with Patrick McBride, the very same constable who had suspected that these encounters were being enacted by her former husband, Roy Makepeace. Their relationship lasted approximately 1 year. McBride, who had recently separated from his wife, moved into Cindy's house on October 31st, 1982. Cindy told her friends that McBride had offered to stay at her house for approximately 2 weeks in an effort to help with surveillance in the event that the perpetrator arrived at her home again. Several days after McBride moved in, he found Roy Makepeace sitting in his parked car in an alley behind the house. When approached and questioned, Makepeace claimed that he was simply trying to catch Cindy's alleged intruder in the act, and subsequently left after McBride informed him that he had moved in. In mid-November, McBride stated that he himself received a mysterious phone call at the home while Cindy was present, and that the caller spoke no words. McBride initially suspected that the call may have been made from an airport terminal as he could hear a woman's voice in the background over a public address system, though the call was eventually traced to an exchange in the Vancouver suburb of Richmond. Later in November, Cindy found a note pinned to her car windshield which featured a picture of a corpse lying under a medical sheet. On November 28th, McBride observed that the phone lines outside the house had been cut in 5 different places. Cindy, who remained cordial and friendly with Makepeace despite their breakup, at times invited him to her home with McBride present, as both men had in common a shared fascination with finding her alleged harasser and would often discuss the case together. McBride moved out of Cindy's home on December 1st, though the two continued to casually date, frequently having dinners together in Vancouver and Bellingham, Washington, in the United States. The week of Christmas 1982, Cindy found a note outside of her home reading, "Merry Christmas," with a photo of a woman who had had her throat slashed, stained with red ink. In January of 1983, Agnes Woodcock, a friend and co-worker, visited Cindy's house and found her lying unconscious in her backyard with a nylon stocking wrapped around her neck. Upon regaining consciousness, Cindy told Woodcock that she had been attacked from behind by an assailant while walking to her exterior garage, and that the individual had brought her into the garage where another male subject waited and the two strangled her. She alleged that the men inserted a knife into her vagina and threatened to kill her younger sister Melanie if she reported the attack to authorities. Doctors who examined Cindy after the alleged attack found no concrete evidence of sexual assault, though the detective remained ambivalent about her claim. Cindy relocated from her residence to a house in West Vancouver on February 1st of 1983, and less than a week later, she received a threatening letter reading, "Run, rabbit, run. I'll show you how fucking good I am. Soon. Bang, bang, soon. Bang, bang, you're dead." After a rash of further obscene phone calls, Cindy relocated again to another house in April of 1983. Roy Makepeace, who had made continued attempts to reconcile with his wife, showered her with several lavish gifts in the summer of 1983 and paid her airfare to Indonesia so she could visit her brother, Roger, who was stationed there. Several weeks after returning from the trip, Cindy found another note, which read, "Welcome back. Death, blood, hate, etc." Cindy made many efforts to keep her anonymity and to conceal her identity, including hiring a private investigator named Ozzy Caban. In January of 1984, Caban overheard strange noises on a two-way radio he had given to Cindy, prompting him to visit her home. Upon arrival, he found her lying unconscious on her living room floor with a paring knife stabbed through her hand and a note pinned through with the knife. The note, which was crafted with letters cut and pasted from a magazine, read, "Now you must die!" expletive. Cindy was taken to a local hospital, and in a later interview with Caban, she stated that the last thing she remembered before being found was witnessing a man coming through the gate to her property before he assaulted her and bludgeoned her over the head with a blunt object. She also stated that once incapacitated, she recalled that her attacker inserted a hypodermic needle into her arm. Doctors were able to locate what they thought was a needle mark in her right arm, but they found no traces of any drugs in her system. In 1984, the investigations turned to focus on Roy Makepeace. In interviews, Makepeace theorized that Cindy's attackers were part of the mafia and connected to her employment, which often treated children who were wards of the court. Over the summer of 1984, the amount and intensity of reports that were filed by Cindy increased dramatically. On June 18th, Cindy called Caban in a panic, and he rushed to her home to find her cowering in the garden, claiming that someone had infiltrated her house. Once inside, Caban discovered her dog cowering in the basement, along with a note reading, "Happy Birthday," paired with sexually explicit photos. The dog had been physically abused, and Caban noticed that the rope bound around the dog appeared to be the same type of rope that was discovered on dead cats that Cindy had found the previous autumn. Over the following several weeks, more calls were received. One of these calls was answered by Caban at Cindy's home while Cindy was at work. On July 9th of 1984, Cindy's mother, Tilly, spent the night at her house. At some point in the night, Tilly awoke to the sound of the dog barking and found Cindy up, frantically checking windows and doors on the main floor. Moments after this encounter, they both heard the doorbell ring and discovered a window near the front porch cracked in several areas. On July 23rd, Cindy claimed that she was attacked by an assailant in nearby Dunbar Park while walking her dog. Cindy stated that she was assailed by a bearded man driving a green van who also had a female passenger. Several hours after this attack allegedly took place, at around midnight, Cindy was found in a dazed state, attempting to enter the home of a neighbor, and had a dark gray nylon stocking around her neck. After that incident, the harassment still continued. In January of 1985, while under hypnosis, Cindy told police that she had witnessed her ex-husband murder a man and a woman, and then dismember their bodies with an axe while they were on vacation at a cabin. It was later discovered that Cindy's sister, Melanie, was with her on that vacation and had absolutely no recollection of anything sinister occurring. In the summer of 1985, Cindy was involuntarily committed to the psychiatric unit at Vancouver's Lionsgate Hospital after having attempted suicide by overdosing on prescription drugs. Shortly after, in early July, Cindy received a package at her home which contained a charcoal-colored nylon stocking along with a note reading, "Blood flowing freely." Several weeks after that, she found a container on her front porch which was apparently filled with rotting meat from an animal. There were then 3 or 4 strange occurrences in which Cindy called and reported fires at her home. Upon arrival, officers noticed that there was burnt newspaper strewn about inside of her home. There was no evidence or markings that an intruder had entered or exited the house. One detective who investigated the fire later testified that he believed Cindy had started the blazes herself. In the fall of 1985, Dr. Anthony Marcus, a psychologist, was requested by Carol Halliday of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to conduct interviews with Cindy and examine the various case files. Halliday felt that Cindy was lying and orchestrating her attacks. Based on his interviews and analysis of police records, Dr. Marcus offered his professional opinion that Cindy may have been suffering from dissociative identity disorder, stemming from a traumatic childhood incident, though he did not question Cindy about her early life during the interviews. By December, Cindy had once again relocated, and just 10 days after that, she was found in a ditch approximately 3.7 miles from her home. She was wearing men's work boots and a single glove, and again she had a nylon stocking tied tightly around her neck. Cindy was suffering from hypothermia and was rushed to the local hospital, where it was suspected that she had been injected with some sort of tranquilizer. In early 1986, the husband of her friend, Agnes Woodcock, would spend nights at Cindy's home. In April, the couple were awoken by Cindy, who stated that she heard a commotion in the house. Upon investigation, they found that another fire had been started in the basement. When they attempted to phone the fire department, they found that the phone was dead. Mr. Woodcock ran across the street to a neighbor's home to call the police, and later said that while exiting the house, he witnessed a man standing on the street outside the residence. When he attempted to approach the man, the subject fled. As this year progressed, Cindy was once again admitted to a psychiatric ward. And now we cover 1987 through 1989. By this time, there has been roughly 7 years of constant torment, harassment, and fear being endured by Cindy, if we are to believe that this is all real. In August of 1987, Cindy once again began working as a nurse. On the 28th of that month, her home alarm was triggered after a back window was broken. And just a few days later, she reported to police that her front porch light bulbs had been loosened. The next week, she reported that someone had used a glass cutter to cut a hole in the basement door window. In February of 1988, Cindy indicated that someone had shattered a window to her home after she had secured it with electrical tape. By October of 1988, the threatening behaviors and phone calls had spilled over, and Roy Makepeace had received 2 strange voice messages on his home answering machine. One of these messages contained a hoarse voice which said, "Cindy, dead meat, soon." The second voice message stated, "More smack, more downers, another grand after we waste the expletive. No more deal." 15 days after these phone calls, Cindy was found unconscious in her garage. She had been hogtied, was nude from the waist down, and again she had a black nylon stocking tied around her neck. Around this time, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police hired mountain climber and knot expert Robert Chisnall to analyze the knots on the nylon stockings she had frequently been found bound up with. At the time, Chisnall concluded that it was highly unlikely that Cindy would have been able to secure the knots herself. In January of 1989, a life insurance salesman that Cindy had purchased a policy from moved into the basement of her residence. She offered him this rental on the basis that she would feel more safe with someone else living with her. On May 10th of 1989, scent hounds were utilized to track an alleged intruder following another alleged break-in. The hounds were able to track the scent of an unknown individual that led over the backyard fence of Cindy's home. At approximately 4 p.m. on May 25th, 1989, Cindy picked up her paycheck from Richmond General Hospital. There, she spoke with a co-worker who reported that she seemed to be in good spirits. Cindy was last seen several hours later purchasing groceries at a supermarket and visiting a bank at a shopping center. That same day, Cindy had been scheduled to have a security system installed in her home and had made plans for her friend Agnes and her husband to stay the night with her. After failing to hear from Cindy, Agnes and Tom Woodcock visited her home at approximately 10 p.m., where they found the house locked and noted that Cindy's car was absent. The couple briefly spoke with the live-in resident, who informed them that Cindy had mentioned she was going to go shopping. The Woodcocks then drove past the Blundell Shopping Center, which they knew Cindy to frequent, and they found her abandoned car in the lot. They then drove to the Richmond Royal Canadian Mounted Police Station and made a missing person report for Cindy. Though Cindy had only been missing for a few hours, a patrol car was sent to investigate based on her extensive history with the police. Upon police examination of the vehicle, blood was located inside the car on the driver's side door, as well as finding blood on the groceries and a wrapped birthday present for her friend's son. Contents from Cindy's wallet were found lying underneath the vehicle. An inspection of her home that night showed that nothing had been disturbed. The Canadian Coast Guard deployed searches of rivers in the area, as well as the Gulf of Georgia, in an attempt to locate the missing woman. Several days after Cindy was reported missing, her tenant informed police that he had received a call at his office from a man claiming to be her father, inquiring about her life insurance policy. When authorities questioned Cindy's father, he denied ever making a phone call. On June 8, 1989, Gordon Starchuk, a municipal paving worker, discovered Cindy's body in the backyard of an abandoned house at 8111 Blundell Road in Richmond. Her body was hogtied with a rope behind her back, and a black nylon stocking was bound tightly around her neck. Cindy's right leg lay beneath a bramble of blackberry bushes, and her coat was found lying near her body. The property where her remains were found was situated along a busy street near an intersection which had frequent foot traffic from pedestrians. On the exterior fuel tank of the residence, police found graffiti in an orange color, which read, "Some bitch died here." There was a line spray-painted along the ground with the same orange paint ran from the fuel tank to the spot where her body lay, encircling it. Inside the abandoned home, another spray-painted graffiti was found, simply displaying the word devil. Sheila Carlisle, a pathologist who examined Cindy's body at the scene, noted that her hands had been bound so tightly that one finger had scratched another down to the bone. A pinprick consistent with a hypodermic needle was located on the inner right elbow of her body. Based on insect and larva activity on the remains, forensic entomologist Gail Anderson concluded that the body had begun the decomposition process at the site where it was found as early as June 2, 1989. An autopsy determined that Cindy had died of multiple drug intoxication from substantial amounts of morphine, diazepam, and flurazepam. Her blood toxicology report showed that she had 10 times the lethal dose of morphine in her bloodstream. Based on an examination of her stomach contents, toxicologist Heather Dinn reported that Cindy had orally ingested approximately 20 30-milligram tablets of flurazepam, in addition to numerous tablets of diazepam, a combination that itself was lethal. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police suspected that Cindy's cause of death was likely a suicide or accident, based on the assumption that she had fabricated her numerous prior claims of assaults and stalking, and this was quickly reported by several local tabloid news outlets. Cindy's personal private investigator, Caban, visited the morgue to examine her body on June 10th, and was noted to observe that her remains exhibited lividity, the settling of blood post-mortem, which was visible on the skin on the left side of her body. Because Cindy's body had been found lying on its right side, He felt that she may have died elsewhere and that her body was relocated to the site where it was ultimately discovered. An extensive inquest into Cindy's death was undertaken in the spring of 1990. The inquest consisted of 5 jurors and testimony from over 80 witnesses. Originally scheduled to run for 3 weeks, the inquest progressed much slower than expected, and an additional 21 days were added. Among the evidence presented were the 2 recorded phone messages that Makepeace had received on his answering machine. During his testimony, Makepeace made accusations against Cindy's family, alleging that her father had physically abused her and that one of her brothers had molested her. Cindy's sister Melanie claims to have found a glass cutter in Cindy's purse, along with a medical syringe kit, a urinary catheter, and saline solution. Attempts to discern whether or not Cindy could have bound herself in the state she was discovered were also focused on during the inquest. Using the same length of nylon found binding her body, knot expert Robert Chisnall demonstrated in court how she could have bound herself within a 3-minute time frame before the effects of the narcotics in her system would have taken effect. The inquest concluded on May 25th of 1990, exactly 1 year after Cindy had disappeared. After deliberations, the jury was unable to determine whether her manner of death was suicide, homicide, or accidental. There are so many more small details within this story, and if you are interested, we urge you to seek them out. We will end the discussion of the strange, unexplained death of Cynthia Elizabeth James by stating that it was ultimately ruled that Cindy had died of an unknown event, and her case was formally closed. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you've enjoyed Volume 1 of Unexplained Deaths. So if this is something that you do enjoy, show us and tell us that you want more of this. Please take care of yourselves out there, and try your best to have sweet dreams.